Hello, it's Gareth. Welcome along to the Somewhere on Earth podcast. And I'm at the Web Summit in Rio, and we're recording this on Tuesday, the 29th of April, 2025. So yes, greetings from the Web Summit Rio 2025, and we're out of the usual studio, and we are in front of an audience. I wonder if we can hear this audience. Just say hello to us, audience. Hello. Hey. You beautiful people giving us a round of applause, you know, during a long day here at the Web Summit. But it's great to see everybody's keeping the energy levels up, and we're having a great time. So we're out of the usual studio and in front of a live audience. And to add to the excitement, we have something pretty important to announce today. So we're going to get to that. Experting with me is producer, editor and CEO, Anya Niktorovich. Hello, Anya.
Hello, Gareth. I cannot believe it. We're in Rio and we have an audience. I mean, we know people are actually listening. It's so exciting.
Very exciting. How does this compare? Because there are lots of different Web Summits in different parts of the world, aren't there?
Yes, I've been lucky enough to go to Web Summit in Lisbon and in Qatar, where we did also podcasts live on stage from both of them. And I have to say, it's much nicer weather. The food is delicious. And I tell you what, the tech is really interesting because Qatar was all about AI. There wasn't a space you could go to that wasn't covered in AI. Here, I think there's much more variety and also quite a lot of tech for good as well, and some really good solutions technology that I've seen. And I've been talking to quite a few startups over the last day and a bit.
All right, there we go. So let's get going. And coming up today. Yes, that announcement. Now, here we go. We're partnering with the Brazil-based company Roost. Now, it connects people through edge computing and the Internet of Things, and we'll delve deeper into those concepts as we go along. Now, we love what they do, and they seem to love what we do. So we've made friends. That's how it's going. So we'll hear from them as we go along. So this really is our launch event. So I've put a special jacket on to celebrate. And we really do have a podcast for you today because we're so excited. On stage with us is the subject of a major Netflix documentary about data and democracy. She's a data ownership activist and is one of the really big names here at Web Summit Rio. So sit back, folks, listen up. We bring you data ownership and edge computing and everything in between, and we tell you why it all matters to you, whoever you are, wherever you are. That's all right here on the Somewhere on Earth podcast. All right, then, first up, let's meet Brittany Kaiser. Hello, Brittany.
Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's amazing to have you on this panel and on our podcast. So Brittany is the founder of the Own Your Own Data Foundation and the hashtag Own Your Data campaign. So I mentioned that Netflix documentary. You may well have seen it. It really did very well. It's called The Great Hack, and it discussed Brittany's time at Cambridge Analytica. And so that company closed in 2018 after a massive data scandal. So but again, many of us in the room will remember that. So these days, Brittany is, you're kind of a data activist. I think we can call you that. I've got you down here as a whistleblower. I mean, I know you've been a whistleblower. Do you continue to blow whistles on things, or?
Well, there was one particular incident I think everyone is quite familiar with. In March 2018, I had worked at Cambridge Analytica for 4.5 years and then blew the whistle on their relationship with Facebook and quite a few of our clients. What I learned over the 4.5 years of being at Cambridge Analytica was that data was most definitely the most valuable asset on Earth. And although governments, political parties, and companies own the data that they collect legally, technically there should be a piece of that pie for the individual so we can actually consent to how our data is being used or not, and if it's being monetized, that we get a piece of the pie. Because certainly a small startup like Cambridge Analytica was spending millions a year, and this was a multi-billion-dollar industry at the time. It's now a multi-trillion-dollar industry. That somehow we as the individuals that produce the world's most valuable asset, we're not getting a part of it legally or regulatorily. But that's finally started to change.
Yeah, sure. I mean, thanks to data activism from people like you and the whole community around, owning your own data. Can you give me an example? Obviously, you have no idea about the data that I hold, but I'm a fairly regular kind of person who has data on the social media platforms, I guess there's banking data and what have you. I'm no entrepreneur or billionaire or anything. And I would sit here and think, well, my data, maybe it's worth $5.50 at the most. Can you give a ballpark of, how much data is worth?
Absolutely. So Mark Zuckerberg himself, many years ago, I think this was 5 or 6 years ago now, said that everybody's data is worth about $48 a quarter. So $48 a quarter just from Facebook, let alone how many other apps do you have on your phone? Probably 50, 100 other apps. And everywhere you go, everything you do, every credit card swipe, everything you look at produces billions, if not trillions of data points every single day that are useful for either private businesses, for the government, or even for your personal use, for your health, for your wellness, for the work that you do on a daily basis. And so harnessing that data for yourself, both the monetary value as well as everything that it can actually do if you have access to that intelligence, are two different forms of value. On the monetary side, if you're able to actually own and use your healthcare data, you can be earning 10, 20, 30, 40, 50K a month if you're in a particular medical trial. If you're just talking about regular transactional data, the data that you produce behaviorally with what you do every day, you can earn enough to pay for your groceries with that data. And that might not mean a lot to the people at this conference, but it certainly means a lot to the billions of people around the world that are living on less than $2 a day.
Yeah, and that's feeding into policy now as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. The first half of my career, I was a human rights lawyer. So I like to think of things in terms of how do we achieve human rights goals instead of proliferating an industry that tends to be quite counterintuitive to the whole human rights framework, which is the way that the data industry works today. But by cutting in individual rights and actually giving us rights to our data, we have the ability to change all that, especially with the rise of IoT and AI, where our data sets are becoming more and more valuable and can be monetized in more and more ways.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned IoT, Internet of Things, because that brings us very nicely to Roost, our new best friends, as I say, this is the launch event for our partnership. And with us on stage is Eli Philo, who is the CEO at Roost. Before we go any further, tell me how to say your name properly. I'm sorry if I got it wrong.
If we're in Brazil, we call Eliezer, but in English, but generally what I say is like, just call me. Any way that you want. I have no problem with that because I know it's a difficult name and that's fine. And I'm proper with that. I only want to be part of the conversation. So that's always the point. So call me anytime, anywhere, no problem on that.
This is why we're such good friends, people. This is why we're such good friends. All right. So you're CEO of Roost, and we got there a little bit into Internet of Things devices, all these tiny embedded devices as we speak, pouring out all this incredible data. Tell me about you and Roost and your relationship with what you call edge computing, which we want you to define, and Internet of Things.
Yeah, I think we can connect the conversation somehow here because when you are talking about data, we are talking about collecting, transmitting, and organizing this data. So what we do at Roost, we use edge computing. What is edge computing? So edge computing is a vision that if you process the data next to where you create the data, you can have better results like reducing latency and, of course, using this as a way to solve problems to the customer somehow. So if you're buying a ticket, for example, for a concert, if you process this close to where you want to buy it, you won't break. We always like to say that the problem of I'm a little bit old, okay? So when we remember when it was the final season of Game of Thrones, everybody was like, oh my God, I need to know what's going to happen with Daenerys. And everybody connected at HBO Go and tried to reach at the same time and broke the connection. So if we have the data organized and processed close to the customer, you can get better results and reduce and avoid latency. You use this on different use cases or to solve any other situation on that. And of course, we are living in a world that we are generating more and more data all the time. So we are talking about, we are around 8 billion of people in the world. But we're saying that we have, 1 trillion of devices connected all the time, generating data. What we do with this data, how we organize the data, how we orchestrate this data, how we monetize this data. So the best way to do this is through a platform. So what we do at Roost, we have an edge computing platform that can orchestrate this data, and with this, use this data to solve use case for any industry, any customers, any different situation. And of course, using this also to create a better world with energy saving, with reducing water waste, or any other situation on that.
Okay, so it could be governments or schools or what have you. What about at the individual level? And this may not be your business, but I'm just thinking about my own home where, like everybody else, we have things like our connected doorbells. I have various sensors for the temperature, and the kind of thing, the devices we all have. Is there a kind of edge computing case even just for the end user consumer as well?
On the user, then I say that the situation is a little bit solved because you have like big solutions for big platforms on that, like for example, Apple, like they have Apple Home that can connect. That Amazon, they have a strong platform with Alexa integrating different devices on that. So we have good solutions. Here in Brazil, we have big companies like Intelbras, that's a partner of us also, that they create and integrate different devices. But when you move to a corporate or organization with their legacy, that, okay, you build a factory. For many, many years, you've been investing in solutions for that. And then, okay, I need to put this in the new world. Transform this in a smart company. So how you do that? With the legacy solutions, well, what we do, we can work with sensors, integrating all this, and use our platform, our own platform, to use this, to organize this data, and to provide the outcomes that you say. Generally, I'd like to say that for us, it's a little bit easier, the concept of a smart city, for example. Yeah, that, okay, you have a different case of a smart city, security, that. Okay, fine. But when you go to a company, you always have the idea, okay, I want to be a smart company, but how you do that in reality with the legacy that you have, it's a big challenge. So this kind of situation we can solve as a company. So that's the point. And of course, with the data in a organized way, with all the protection, with the local protection on that, respecting the individuals, the laws that we have against with this and all that situation.
Okay, I get. And so look, you've just, Brittany, told us that we own our own data. What Eli has presented is actually quite a complicated picture, isn't it? Because we're using third-party devices. Maybe like Apple or Amazon would say, well, we own this data because we made the device that's generated that data. We're adding value to that data. This gets very complicated very quickly, doesn't it? Or does it need to? I don't know.
Well, it does with a lot of, as he refers to as legacy data architecture. Modern data architecture does have the ability to track and trace data flows. So you can see where the data is coming from. You can see what it's consented to be used for, APIs that can be called just for particular purposes, where the data is only available for a certain period of time or for a certain use case. So now we actually have the ability to permission data and say, individuals or these companies or these government departments agreed for this data to be used for these purposes for this long and be monetized in this way. And then we're able to enter that data into IoT devices, into algorithms that formulate new AI technologies, and actually say, okay, well, this percentage of the revenue is fractionally owned by all the people who contributed data sets, and not just individual people, but also companies. And that way you're able to track and trace it all, have a proper monetary structure that is equitable, and that respects everybody's rights in the contract.
Yeah, so Anya's listening to this with great interest. So you're worth a lot of money, Anya, with all your data.
Yeah, I am. And I think what's really important here is that people take ownership of their own data and actually think a little bit about, what am I signing up for? How am I doing this? Do I really need this app? I had a recent conversation. I have 2 teenage daughters, their friends are around, and one alarm went off and one of their friends says, hey, my period's due. Can someone lend me a tampon, because her app said so. And I said, well, hang on a minute. Where's that data going? Who's that going to? Which company is going to know not only when your period starts, when you ovulate? Do you want some big company to know that? And they hadn't thought of that at all. And I think it's really important to tell people, is it really worth it? just to know something like that when you can have a guesstimation? You can put it in a paper calendar, can't you? Like, I used to. And then there's also, thinking about other people's data as well, particularly if you have children. What are you putting out there? The obvious thing is, those photos on Facebook where it's, hey, it's first day at school, everybody. Here's my child in their uniform with the name of the school on their chest. And look, behind me, there's a picture of our house that you can trace on Google. So you now know the child's name, probably, because they've given a first name. And if it's even not your name as the mother, it's going to be the father's surname, probably. Then you've got the school. Then you've got the address, because you can find that on Google View very quickly. And it's a case of just being aware of what you're putting out there and how you're putting it out. My 8-year-old is upset because there is no trace of him on the internet. This is one of my greatest mothering achievements. But the other issue is, Brittany, you mentioned, having a slice of the pie. How do you get a slice of the pie? Because, you could actually earn quite a nice slice, couldn't you? How would I do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a big announcement this afternoon. There's a company called Drumwave that is dual headquartered in Silicon Valley and in Brazil, here in Sao Paulo. And we are launching the first data ownership pilot with a government that has ever happened before. The way that data ownership traditionally works, because tons of companies have tried to solve this in different ways, but you have a data ownership wallet, and within that wallet, you're able to see all of the data sets that are held about you by companies, by governments. And if you consent to that data being shared with third parties and monetized through third parties, then you receive 50% of the revenue from it. All of us are spending more than 50% of the cost to create all of our data every year. We pay for the hardware, the chipset, the data package. So the hardware and the software is being paid for by us. All the individual platforms are paid for by the companies that built them and continue to manage them. So therefore, the company that collected the data or the government department that collected that data and you who produced that data share in the revenue structure. So here in Brazil, we will be launching a national data ownership wallet released by the Social Security Administration. And you will be able to log into your Social Security app and choose to add a data savings account onto that and start to earn money of all of the data that you are consenting to share. And all of that data will be anonymized and aggregated, so it's privacy protecting. We'll have nothing about your personal information shared, and you get to consent to exactly what is shared with whom and for what purpose, or not.
So, that's brilliant. That's absolutely amazing. I wish I was living in Brazil so I could do that.
Yeah, well, this is really interesting. I think that we have a great opportunity because, of course, the focus on data is on monetization, and that's great. But I see a lot of other points here because you're talking about real protection on that. Mm-hmm. Because one of the main challenges is, okay, we have a law in Brazil that protects the data, we have agreements and all that, but even we have a strong law on that, as the European Union, they also have, but we don't see this happening in a proper way here in Brazil. So when you see like a movement on that, I'm sure that the companies will need to have more responsibility on that. And that's the main point here, because data is something that is intangible, so you cannot see it, you cannot feel it. But if you don't manage this properly, it can change everything. Cambridge Analytica is an example. We see now a big discussion about elections, politicians, based on the data and how we manipulate the data. So I see this project as a great opportunity for us to try to change the situation with more respect to the customers and the citizens in general.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Yeah.
Eli, it's not only a problem in Brazil. I mean,
It's worldwide.
GDPR and the EU, the amount of times you try and get something and someone says, oh, I can't tell you, it's GDPR. And you know it's not, but you just can't get through, can you, Gareth?
Yeah,
You just can't. And people, just don't know what it's about.
So it shows different approaches, doesn't it? You know, there's the kind of strong regulatory approach through GDPR. This seems to be a more kind of open market approach. It's like, hey, let's call it an asset and treat it as an asset class. Now we can do different things with it. Which brings me to my yes, but question. As we know, when anything becomes an asset, then speculators pile in and often increase its value. And that might be quite good for the data holder, but couldn't that kind of misalign a lot of incentives? You know, I just wonder, just for the regular person, is there a chance that their own data could be kind of speculated in a way that doesn't suit their interest, I guess?
I would say that's what's going on today, right now, and has been going on for the past couple decades, where all of our data is a speculative asset going to the highest bidder or going to any bidder that can afford even a minimum price for it. Everybody pays a different price to license our data without our explicit consent, and it's used for whichever purposes, and any monetization that comes out of that is never shared with the individual. So creating data as an asset class and recognizing its value and giving people property rights to their intangible personal property for the first time actually gives us legal recourse to protect its contents, to be able to keep it private if we don't want to share it, because you certainly can't be forced to share your house or your car or any other asset that you own under property law. But if you do want to share it, then you have rights to the monetization, because certainly if you share your house or your car on Airbnb or a ride-sharing app, you get paid because you are lending your asset for other people to use it because it's valuable. So it's recognizing those legal rights enshrined in property law, giving those to people, which helps you protect your human rights. But the human rights legal framework is very difficult to use. I'm a human rights lawyer, so I can say that. But on the property rights framework, you can say, if anyone damages my data, that's property damage, and you get compensated for that. That's how we won the first successful case against Equifax. In McCarthy v. Equifax, we sued them for property damage, and we won, which is why at the Supreme Court we got case law on data ownership in the United States. But that's really how it functions, in the same way that it would allow you to own anything else you already own. We all know how that works, and it would be really great if we could enforce our digital rights in the same way we do our physical property rights.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think how I'd feel about it if I was a CEO of a big technology company like Facebook or Google. Like, on the one hand, is it like, well, I'm sitting on all this data, now users are claiming that data, so I'm losing all that value. But on the other hand, I'm sitting on an asset that suddenly shot up in value because of all the reasons we've been talking about. I don't know, was it good news or bad news for them?
Well, that's where this gets really interesting, because a lot of people say, oh, isn't data ownership taking a percentage of these companies' revenue and asking them to give it out to people? Well, actually not. If all of a sudden you are incentivizing your users by paying them to use your app, guess what? Your engagement is going to go through the roof. So you actually are sharing out a small slice of a much bigger pie than you would be working with today.
Yeah, it seems like a win-win situation.
Absolutely.
That. So I see that's a great opportunity for the company to see that, but certainly it's a tricky situation that you have to break a big wall to move on that direction. Mm-hmm. But I think with the support of the government, that's certainly something really important.
Yeah, and what's really exciting here in Brazil is we currently have a federal law that is being considered that gives the entire country data ownership rights, and rights to its monetary value, and rights to withdraw consent at any time to data that you are sharing and monetizing. That currently has majority support right now. It is currently being considered here as a federal law. It'd be the first federal data ownership law in the world that will be hopefully rolled out at the same time as the technology for everyone to do so.
Yeah, and this must be very exciting for you, Eli, because presumably it could trigger, and almost definitely will trigger, a whole load of innovation in your space in edge computing and IoT, because no longer are Internet of Things devices slightly boring little boxes that just squeak out a little bit of data now and again. They're squeaking out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, a real kind of asset that can be monetized. So do you see this as boosting innovation in your space?
Yes, I think it's boosting, and also this point here on your own data management opens a new layer on the discussion, because, well, our vision as a company is we understand the complexity of the business and between the legacy and the new solutions and how we collect, organize, and treat this data. But if you see like in this vision that you can have a wallet with platforms and data, you can add this layer also in the discussion. Maybe in the near future, we'll be able to integrate together with the sensors data, the devices data, people's data, and with this can solve in a better way some use cases from the industry and the government in general. Because imagine like that, okay, you can manage like the data from cameras to understand how a group of people use on that, integrating this with the usage of a platform, understand these people with the information that you have on the data, all in a proper way with the security, with the right monetization and all that, how we could increase and boost innovation in a bigger view for our customers. I see this as a really great opportunity.
Yeah, and maybe personally, data that we haven't even thought about that much, because I think even now we're just only beginning to really talk a lot about body data. I mean, I know we've had fitness trackers for some time now, but when you think about the bio data and the granularity and how cheap it is to get hold of a lot of very key biodata, there must be a lot of possibility and maybe dangers there as well. This is the most intimate data we have, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But my Oura Ring and my biodata runs my life. I have succumbed to my AI overlords that tell me when I need to rest, when I need a nap, when I need to drink more water, when I need to go to bed early in order to improve my health. And since I've started listening to all of the AI recommendations based on my live health data, I have lost 30 pounds. I'm so much more productive at work. I'm so much healthier and happier. Most of my brain fog is gone. If we are actually able to access all of our data in all parts of our life and start to use that intelligence to improve our lives, everyone could benefit so much. Where right now data is living in silos, doesn't talk to each other, and you don't have access to it because you don't own it.
All right, so let's come back to you, Agnete. We've moved, this discussion's gone into lots of amazing directions there, more than I even imagined that we would in this brief time,
Some of the things for me are mind-blowing, that you love your Oura Ring. I have a teenage daughter who loves her Fitbit, and I wouldn't have it. And they're like, it's just because you're now at that age and you can't get your personal best times for this and this. Well, no, actually, I don't want that data going there. But there are clear benefits that you can actually see, and it can also pick up. There have been cases of heart attacks being picked up by Apple Watches that then people go to the ER and their lives are saved because you have the first symptoms coming through. And so you really have to balance it out with all of that. And again, Eli, all this data that's coming through the edge computing, I just think it's so exciting. And it's going to be great working with you and seeing all the absolutely amazing possibilities and what the future brings.
Yeah, I think it's great. Because the main challenge when I talk about data in general is how can you connect everything in a way that you can provide good insights. So that's the point. When you're talking about your health and all that, that's about connection. So data we have. But the problem is that we don't have control about our own data. So I think the point here is that if we can organize in a way using like an activist vision, like you're bringing, Brittany, on this point, we together with the government and all this regulation that works, certainly I see a lot of opportunities that we can manage this data in a way that can provide people the right point. Our vision as a company is based on that, because Rus started, of course, we are a technology company, but we have a strong ESG vision, because the only goal that we believe that technology can bring is like doing good for the population, good for the people. And data can do good for the people. What we've seen so far, no. honestly, because we know that the people use data to manage different points. But if you have like the right regulation, monetization, organization on that, I see a bit brighter future for us as a society.
God, I've never had such an upbeat discussion about data. They're usually rather miserable discussions. So final thought from you, Brittany, data activist. Your work here is done. What will you do next? Deliberately provocative leading question to end with in 30 seconds.
Well, I think it's so incredibly visionary that the government of Brazil and companies in Brazil are taking the first step to give an entire national population data ownership rights. Both legally and technically, it's incredibly exciting. I'm really hoping that my country, the U.S., is the next one. We have a lot of good footholds there. The UAE is also very interested in it. Saudi Arabia is very interested in it. And tons of new countries are starting to see the value of taking a multi-trillion-dollar asset and actually recognizing its value as an asset under management and using it to empower your own people. So that's where we're headed next. Other jurisdictions that are open to the legislation, that are open to integrating the technology and empowering their own people.
A huge thank you for everyone who's listened, but also to the Backstage crew. Please, can you give them a round of applause? Because they are the ones who make us sound great.
We appreciate it. And thank you, dear listener, for being with us on this very special edition of the Somewhere on Earth podcast. So from me, Gareth, and all of us here on stage, all the people here in Rio, thanks for listening and goodbye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, guys.
Hi, everyone. It's Michael Calore, Director of Consumer Tech and Culture at Wired, here with my colleagues, senior writer Lauren Good.
Hello.
And Wired contributor Zoe Schiffer.
Hey, everyone.
We're here to tell you about our new podcast, Uncanny Valley, a show about the people, power, and influence of Silicon Valley.
Every week, we get together to talk about how technology and culture from the Valley is influencing our everyday lives.
We dig into questions like, will we ever get our privacy back? Is OpenAI for real? And how are Silicon Valley billionaires impacting U.S. elections?
The first episode of Uncanny Valley comes out on October 31st. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.